discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GBNews.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and journalist and broadcaster Matthew Snadlen. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. Good afternoon. The latest news headlines. Boris Johnson has defended his leadership by claiming voters want to hear less about what he's calling things he stuffed up following a double by-election defeat. Speaking from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda, the Prime Minister said listening to criticism is part of his job as leader.
Things are tough. Of course, people are going to, rightly, going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think, to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
But Labour's Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey told GB News the public wants Mr Johnson to go.
I'd spent a lot of time campaigning in Wakefield, very struck by the level of disgust and discontent as people, I think, have seen through Boris Johnson and have lost confidence in the Conservatives doing the basic job of government now. And so it's our job in opposition until the next election to try and hold them to account and offer some of the plans that would make a difference, including on the cost of living, that we're just not seeing from the government itself.
In other news today, the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the railway industry needs to move with the times as a third day of walkouts disrupt transport across the country. Only a fifth of train services are running today as thousands of rail workers protest over jobs, pay and conditions. RMT boss Mick Lynch says rail workers would get a better deal if the government actually understood the work they do.
We're not going to name dates immediately, and we're going to continue working constructively with the companies to try and get a deal. But that is a really steep challenge at the moment, and it hurts our people because they've lost their wages. We don't want that to happen. So if Grant Shapps wants to be constructive, that's what he can do. It's up to him what his disposition is. I'll work with Grant Shapps or anyone else that's got something constructive to say in this dispute.
In the United States, President Joe Biden has just signed a historic new gun safety bill into law. Republicans and Democrats were able to agree a deal following a string of recent mass shootings in America. The new measures strengthen background checks for the youngest buyers of weapons and increases funding to mental health and school safety programs. President Biden is praising the bill, even though he says it doesn't go far enough.
For the shootings that happen every day in the streets that are mass shootings we don't even hear about, the number of people killed every day in the streets. Their message to us was do something. I don't know how many times we heard that. Just do something. For God's sake, just do something. Well, today we did. While this bill doesn't do everything I want, it does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives.
Police say the deadly shooting overnight in Norway could be an act of Islamist terrorism. 2 people died and 14 others were seriously hurt at a nightclub in the capital, Oslo. Officers say a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin is now in custody. The shooting happened just hours before the city's annual Gay Pride parade, which has been cancelled. Local militia say Ukrainian forces in Severodonetsk in the east of the country have been ordered to withdraw. The retreat would leave most of Luhansk now under Russian control. Earlier today, Boris Johnson said the economic consequences of Russia's war could force Ukraine to agree a peace deal that's not in its interests. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have marked Armed Forces Day today by paying tribute to the men and women, past and present, who've served their country both here in the UK and around the world. Kensington Palace marked the occasion by releasing 5 new images taken in November last year when Kate visited Pirbright Army Training Facility near Aldershot. Earlier, HMS Prince of Wales returned to Portsmouth Naval Base after completing NATO exercises off the coast of Spain. The Royal Navy aircraft carrier was the command ship for the drills. And Sir Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury Festival's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. His set is expected to attract an especially large crowd with hits from throughout his career. You're with GB News, more news as it happens. Now, let's get back to Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, I simply couldn't let this one go. Some people regard him as one of the greatest strikers of all time. Our dear friend, Gary Lineker. I loved him when I was younger. I thought he was amazing. But that was because he kicked a ball about. He never actually opened his mouth. Because when he does, the most nonsensical, hypocritical tosh escapes from it. And I'm beginning to think he doesn't really know it's happening and it's just spewing uncontrollably. Let's start with hypocrisy. He takes on a refugee for a few weeks, then later has a go at me, calling me vile on social media, instigating a pile-on because I dared to support Priti Patel's turn-back policy, which I didn't think he was actually allowed to comment about, seeing as it's political and he works for the BBC. But hey-ho, one rule for Gary. But despite his supposed support for refugees, he's more than happy to go to the Qatar World Cup, which makes no secret of its treatment of migrants and refugees, basically like slaves, many dying building the very stadiums he's off to commentate at. The same place whose treatment of LGBT people is abhorrent, another cause Gary claims to show affinity towards. He even went on about masks, but then was caught without one in a store and blamed it on his old age. Now, I ignored Gary because that is usually the best thing to do, but I'm afraid I couldn't let this one go. In his latest gaffe, he claims because of his darker skin, he's experienced racism. I almost choked on my drink. I bet he wished I had, because I wouldn't be around to point out how ludicrous that sounds. This is what he said on the High Performance podcast. Without being good at sport, life would have been very different for me, but because I was, I think I would have been bullied at school. I was kind of marginally that way anyway, because I was this tiny, geeky kid with darkish skin, and I had pretty much racist abuse, although I'm as English as they come. Ridiculous. Gary, you haven't got a clue about racism. And that very comment is almost racist in itself. The bit where you say that you are as English as they come, which translates to me that you perceive darker people to be less English, which is why you felt the need to justify yourself and explain it. That's my interpretation of it anyway, because I hear those sort of comments all the time. This last bit makes me laugh. He said, whether that was part of something that made me, I don't know. But other people might not be able to handle that. And this is even worse than Meghan Markle's claims. At least she's half black. Some people may well have been racist towards her, but Gary Lineker appears to be taking on some sort of cultural appropriation, as though he understands my pain. So let me give you an idea of what it's like to be black. When you, say, initiate a pylon to your 8.2 million followers against a single black female, somebody who is actually black, can you imagine the racist abuse that comes with that? Oh, yes, of course you can, because when you are slightly tan, but as you say, English as they come, you've experienced racism. What an insult to those of us that live with it on a daily basis, Gary. I've experienced racism all my life, and it often comes from so-called do-gooders like yourself. The sort of people who diss the Rwanda plan because it is such a terrible place, having never visited it. How do they know it's horrible? It seems good enough for the leaders of the Commonwealth and for the EU when they sent migrants there. But these so-called do-gooders think that they're doing good by condemning it, but what they're actually doing in most cases is revealing, in my view, a level of racism that they haven't even noticed. For people like me who experience it, and it cuts like a knife, Gary, every time. But we learn to deal with it because it is based on ignorance. Can I get a split screen with Gary, please? I'm black, Gary. You're white. Your comments trivialise the experience of racism that people of colour like me go through. May I suggest, Gary, that you stick to things you know, like promoting unhealthy food and tossing a ball. So before we get started, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In my difficult conversation at 5 o'clock, we'll be talking about the dangers of drowning. This week is Drowning Prevention Week, and the campaign is designed to raise awareness of water safety in line with the summer when hot weather may tempt some people to take to the water for an impromptu swim. And it's not just children who are tempted, adults also need to be aware of the dangers too. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you blame the by-election losses on? Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he has said that he'll keep fighting after the Lib Dems overturned a huge majority in Tiverton and Honington, and Labour retook the seat of Wakefield in a double-dose by-election defeat for the Tories. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? And in our Royal Roundup this week, Prince Charles told Commonwealth nations that decisions about whether they keep the Queen as head of state or become a republic are matters for them to decide. But could this risk the breakup of the Commonwealth? That's all coming up as ever. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and also journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. Right, so welcome everybody. First, good to see you, Neil, by the way. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's the first time we're on the panel. How do you feel?
Yeah, the first time I'm a person in my own right and not just the appendage to Christie.
Oh, bless her. She's lovely, isn't she? I hope she gets well quickly.
Thank you.
Soon.
She's getting out of hospital tonight, and I'm going to pick her up on my way home.
Oh, that's so lovely. You're such a nice couple, the pair of you. Now, what do you think? Gary Lineker has popped his head above the parapet. He dares to sort of venture into the race comment and feels that his darker skin may have sort of affected or helped him in his... I don't know what he was on about. What do you
Well, I think you put the ball right in the back of Gary's net with that one.
Thank you, Neil.
It was a great mistake. I think certainly a very bad career move for him to move from kicking balls to talking balls, because he was much better at the former, wasn't he? Actually, he's pretty good at talking balls. He's an embarrassment to himself, isn't he, I think? He's like a lot of these limousine liberals. You remember how Emma Thompson flew back from Los Angeles first class to attend an Extinction Rebellion rally in Trafalgar Square?
Yes.
These people have zero self-awareness, it seems to me. And I've had spats with Gary on Twitter as well. I feel rather sorry for him, really. He's got a rather sad life because everything that he supposedly believes in is the very opposite of the world in which he lives. But I think that you really put your finger on the button there. Or when people like him talk of racism, they're actually adopting the problems that they could never have suffered and which other people have really had problems with in the whole of their lives. I think it's an insult to people like you in particular.
Of course.
He would better be advised, I think, to keep his trap shut.
Well, Matthew Stanton, what do you think?
What do you think I'm going to think?
Well, I'm worried, but I think you probably support Gary on this one. I don't know.
No, I mean, I have a bit of beef with Gary myself because he blocked me on Twitter for daring to criticise Lionel Messi, and Gary Lineker loves Lionel Messi. But I'll try to be as balanced and put that to one side as I can. I agree with a lot of what you said in your powerful introduction, Nana, and it's certainly true that for a white man with no ethnic differences at all, as English as they come, which I agree is an offensive thing to say. I'm sure he didn't mean it to be offensive, but it is objectively offensive. For him to say that he experienced racism is opening himself up to attacks from almost every side. So it was a daft thing to say. And yet, you on GB News, you don't like cancelling people, you don't like cancelling people's opinions. You would expect an interviewee to tell the truth about their life, to tell the truth about their experiences. And as ludicrous as it may seem for a white person to say that he experienced racism in a largely white country, particularly when he was playing football, if it's the truth, would you want that opinion cancelled?
No, I don't believe in cancelling anybody. He can say what he likes, but be ready that if you sort of use terms like as English as they come...
But assuming it's true...
No, hang on, let me finish, because you asked me a question. So assuming it's true, which I'm surprised that he would have mentioned it now. How old is he? It's taken him this long to say it? Because what the difference between that is, even if it's true and there's a small portion of his life where people were slightly offensive towards him because he had slightly darker skin, he cannot claim to have any understanding of what somebody like me who goes through in terms of racism, because that, to me, is just maybe a little bit of bullying, but that's not racism. So, that's not racism. That is a little bit of bullying. That's not racism.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. And the fact that he talked about it risks belittling your experience. Absolutely. And who are any of us on the panel to say to you otherwise? But if you'd been the interviewer, you're a professional presenter, I'm a professional presenter and interviewer, if we'd been asking Gary Lineker about his life, would we have wanted him to keep his mouth shut on something that he says did affect him?
I'm glad he opened his mouth, because I'm opening mine. I respect that. What do you think?
I've got to disagree with everyone. I think, for me, Gary Lineker's admission that he suffered, terrible racism really puts into perspective 400 years of slavery. And I think, Nana, you could learn a lot from Gary. You've both suffered the exact same racism, and he's just such an inspiring man. He overcame this constant racism that he was subjected to become one of the top crisp sellers in the country and tax dodgers. HMRC were pursuing him for £4.9 million last year. So he's a wonderful example of how to escape and prosper.
Well, they may have been chasing him, but I don't know whether they actually caught him. Did they? And if not, because we don't know the details of that, but I know it may have been mentioned, so we'll have to...
Well, it's in the papers. The HMRC were pursuing him. I don't know what happened after that, but he was, because he was saying he's not an employee. And funnily enough, his political tweets all his activism that he does online is actually used by him to say that he's not a BBC employee, because a BBC employee would have to be impartial.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is, but it's, well, not necessarily, actually, because I work for the BBC, and if I had said something that was not acceptable for the BBC, then they would not have allowed that. So you don't have to be staff. If you are there representing in any capacity for the BBC, then you shouldn't be talking about making political comment, actually, as I understand.
But Gary trying to claw on to the next big issue that's come rolling through culture. So he's trying to, make himself part of the sort of, the struggle against racism and Black Lives Matter by, claiming he suffered we shouldn't laugh, claiming he suffered terrible racist abuse. It reminds me of Madonna. Every time a new genre of music comes out, Madonna brings out an album trying to stay relevant and stay in touch. Gary's anything that comes through, he's talking about refugees, he's talking about taking the knee, nuclear weapons. Now he's suffering racism. He's just desperate to stay relevant, stay in the headlines.
Could I just say a word in his defence, just for a moment? I agree with a lot that has been said when it comes to specifically about the BBC. I told you on this show a couple of weeks ago how I'd been cancelled, not allowed to do a BBC show because I'd expressed political views on the left before I'd even been on air.
So not even working.
It's very important that the BBC is seen to be impartial, and although Gary Lineker is not a news presenter, I even though I agree with a lot of his opinions, you may say it's virtue signalling, I agree with a lot of his opinions on climate change, on refugees, and he's done more than I have by taking a refugee into his own home. I don't think he should be allowed to give the views he does, whether I happen to agree with them or not, like Prince Charles.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I agree with a lot of what Prince Charles says. Do I want our future monarch giving his view? Not really.
No, exactly. I don't understand why he should be allowed to do that. And I mean, after his comments towards me, then there was a huge pile-on and people doing this. And he's got, at the time, he had 8.2 million followers. Now, you would think that as a responsible person, you would know that to do that to somebody isn't really a good look, especially if you work for an organisation
This is a man.
I didn't really understand.
This is a man who makes hundreds of thousands of pounds deliberately targeting crisps, which are a very unhealthy snack, at fat kids.
Well, I don't
think morality is something
it's basically anyone that will eat them. But I mean, hey, look, I don't begrudge anybody trying to make a fast buck doing advertising on anything, because I might end up. I mean, I'm a fitness expert, but if somebody said, "Would you promote this for like 2 million?" I'd be like, "Yeah, of course."
Don't give yourself away, Nana. Don't give yourself away.
2 million, actually, that's quite cheap. But I would probably do it myself as well, so I can't comment on that. I can't criticise him for that. But it is part of one of the things he does as well. So he does, talk about crisps. So anyway, what do you think? Do you think he was right? Do you think that Gary sort of has a sort of tinge to him that he may well have suffered racist abuse? I mean, maybe it is true, but seriously, Gary, you have no idea. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? Now, there are 4 options on there, and so it's over to you to work out what do you think. I mean, I think the first option is whether it is the behaviour of the MPs, of course, the 2 MPs that lost their seats. Is it Boris Johnson? Or do you think it's actually the infighting of the Conservative Party, or is it the Conservative Party policies themselves? Cast your vote, say what you think. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he'll keep fighting, though, after the Lib Dems, who overturned a huge majority in Tiverton and Honington. That was, I think, Neil Parish's seat. And then Labour retook the seat of Wakefield in the 2 by-elections, so a double-dose defeat. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? Cast your vote now. Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk and tell me what you think. You can also tweet us at GBNews, and I've popped a poll up there right now asking that very question. You've got 4 options. What do you blame for the by-election losses? Is it disgraced MPs, Boris Johnson, Tory infighting, or Tory policies? Cast that vote first. Let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be breezy and unsettled with showers for northern and western areas. Let's look at the details. Showers across southwest England will continue to move through quite quickly, so there will be some late sunny spells. However, it'll feel quite fresh with a strong southwesterly breeze. In southeast England, it'll be a dry evening with sunny spells coming and going, feeling relatively fresh here too with a strengthening breeze. In South Wales, heavy showers will push north-eastwards throughout the evening, feeling quite cool exposed to the brisk westerly breeze and during any showers. In the Midlands, it will turn a little bit drier into this evening as showers move away to the north, so a mix of cloudy and clear spells and still the risk of the odd shower too. In northeast England, after a relatively dry day, cloud cover will increase for some with a risk of showers into the evening. Windy at the coast with gusts of 30 miles per hour. Southern Scotland will see sunshine and showers this evening as well, feeling cool whilst raining, but it will dry up quickly once they clear and the sun comes out once again. It'll be a very windy evening for the time of year in Northern Ireland. More persistent rain will continue in the west, whilst the east will see some sunny spells. Overnight it will remain clear in the east, but further west it'll turn much wetter again and the winds will pick up too. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing Gary Lineker. Let's have a quick look about what you've been saying. Dottie says, I'm as furious as you about Lineker. He needs to keep his mouth shut. He keeps putting his foot in it. Will he ever learn? Paul says, you're of African origin and I'm half Polish from my father, but we're both Brits. Gary Lineker is a bubblehead who insults black Brits by claiming he feels black pain. He's a joke. Keep your thoughts coming on this and everything we're discussing. I'm loving them. But now it is time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that he'll keep fighting after the Lib Dems overturned a huge majority in Tiverton and Honiton, and Labour retook the seat of Wakefield in 2 by-election losses. But what do you think is to blame for these poor results? Was it the attitude towards the disgraced MPs who triggered these by-elections in the first instance? I mean, Neil Parish and Imran Khan. Was it Boris Johnson himself? I mean, he's had Partygate, Beergate, Wallpapergate. There's been so many gates, I can't shut any of them. Or perhaps it was the apparent constant Tory infighting. I mean, they've been scrapping over this. They're now trying to overturn the no confidence vote. They're now going to try and change the rules so that they can change the vote. I mean, they just will not let it rest. Or perhaps it's Tory policy. You've got to pick one. I know it's so difficult. There was that disastrous thing that Rishi Sunak rustled up. What is it, the spring statement, where he offered tax relief for those who could afford heat pumps and solar panels. I mean, I don't know where they're going with that. So it's a difficult one. Which one will you pick? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? I'm joined by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne, thank you so much for joining me. Now, Anne, in your view, why do you think that the Conservatives lost the by-elections yesterday?
I think it was a mixture of all those causes which you've read out. I mean, the two MPs that had given up their seats had behaved appallingly, and that would have left a very bad feeling. The infighting is just dominating the press. The Tories don't look like a party that is marching to victory. They look like a party which is just falling apart, arguing amongst itself. Some of the policies, of course, have been unpopular, though the Rwanda policy remains very popular in the polls. So I think it's probably a mixture of those things. But this much I do know, that unless they really come up with some imaginative policies and present a united front, they've got to do those two things, then frankly it doesn't matter what Boris does, they're not going to win the next election. So I would say to any Tory who's still going on about a confidence vote and changing the rules, just look at the timetable and ask yourself if you really want the party to be breaking out in argument and fights and all the rest of it just months before a general election, which is what in effect it will come to a year out from a general election. Everybody's talking about it and everybody sees everything you do in terms of that.
So if you could pick one, I mean, to me, watching it, it's like watching The Apprentice, isn't it? You've got to say, look, just win, and then you can do whatever, but you need to win first. They're not going to win like this. If you could pick one of them, though, which do you think is the most, the main reason why you think that they lost that by-election? Because I can see it's a mixture of all four. But if I was to put my finger on one, I don't know which one, but which one would you put your finger on for that?
I think probably the third, which is the Tory infighting, followed closely behind by the fourth, which is Tory policies, because other than Rwanda, what can you name that has actually caught the popular imagination? And the thing that I really resent is this, Boris should now be, when he talked about getting Brexit done, it wasn't just getting it done, it was making it irreversible. And if he now took VAT off fuel, not only would it help people with their winter fuel bills, but more important than that, it would make it impossible for anybody to want to vote to go back into the EU. Why doesn't he do something like that? It's not rocket science.
Why do you think that from the outside looking in, for me, I can see that it just looks like a dishevelled mess, the way they're behaving. Why do you think that the backbenchers and the people within the party are so adamant on trying to change the leader at this most poignant time?
Again, I think there's a mixture of reasons. First of all, you've got a lot of Tories who are still wet behind the ears. This is the first time they've served in Parliament. 2 years were not normal because of COVID. They were hardly there actually doing anything. They don't say, with the world weariness of people like me, oh, for heaven's sake, we've seen it all before. You can lose by-elections big time and you can go on to win a general election. It's what you do in between the two that counts. We've seen it all before. John Major lost a couple of desperate by-elections in 1991. 1992, he won the general election. It can be done, but they're not focused on that. They've got it into their heads that they need no disasters between winning the last election and fighting the next one. They need no disasters. And once there's a disaster, it's the PM's fault and he's got to go. Silly idiots.
What you've got MPs, though, like Andrew Bridgen and Steve Baker, who are looking for a new way to change the rules as well to get rid of him. I mean, if you could speak to them, you've mentioned it earlier, but what would your message be to both of those two?
Oh, my message to those two would be, you need to secure Brexit. Now, don't get away with the idea that Brexit may not be changed. We've had Tobias Ellwood saying, well, if we can change the leadership, we can go back into the single market. Make sure the policies happen, which will mean that Brexit is totally irreversible. And to do that, you need a Brexiteer as PM, and you've got one. And think of the risk that you run of getting a Remainer or getting a pseudo-Remainer if you get rid of Boris. Those two are big Brexiteers. What are they thinking of? What are Baker and Bridgen thinking of?
Anne Widdecombe, it's so good to talk to you. Thank you very much. That's Anne Widdecombe. She's a former Conservative minister. Let's take a look at what you've been saying. Let's see. Jane says, this government is not a real Tory government and the PM is a liar. They seem to delight in removing our rights and freedoms, locking us down, killing small businesses, making us all poorer and sicker. I voted for them, but won't make that mistake again. Yeah, but if you don't vote for them, Jane, who are you going to go for? I mean, if you want to be poorer, a Labour government will do it. And as for the other one, well, we have no idea. Kelly says, well, we still don't have, I don't know any Labour policies, I don't know what they are. Kelly says, mainly the Conservative government not being Conservative, though I do think the content of why the by-elections happened will have played a part too. Yeah, I mean, if those two sleazy MPs hadn't done that, there wouldn't be any by-elections. David says, it's nice that at least one person has spotted the herd of elephants in the room with disgraced MPs that must always be considered. Because I know. You see, this is the thing. No one was talking about the disgraced MPs. Everyone was going on about, oh, Boris this, he's gone off to Rwanda, he shouldn't be doing that. Hang on. There wouldn't have been a by-election if they haven't behaved that way. But what do you think? You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlin. And in my difficult conversation at 5 o'clock, make sure you join me. We'll be talking about drowning prevention, as it is that week this week. The campaign is actually designed to raise awareness of water safety. That's ahead of the summer outdoors. But it's not just children who need to be aware. Of course, it's adults as well. We'll be looking into that. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. Boris Johnson is today defending his leadership, saying voters want to hear more about the real issues that affect them and less about any mistakes he may have made. The Prime Minister was responding to recent criticisms, including the resignation of his Tory party chairman after a double by-election defeat, COVID lockdown parties and soaring inflation.
I have to, listen to all sorts of criticism. That's part of my job as leader. When things are tough, of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
And the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has today been saying the railway industry needs to move with the times as a third day of walkouts disrupt transport across the country. 20% of train services are still running today as thousands of RMT union members protest over jobs, pay and conditions. The union is refusing to rule out further action. In the United States, President Joe Biden has signed a historic new gun safety bill into law. Lawmakers were able to reach a bipartisan deal following a string of recent mass shootings in America. The new measures strengthen background checks for the youngest buyers of weapons and increase funds for mental health and school safety programmes. And lastly, Armed Forces Day has been marked up and down the country, including a dramatic display from the RAF's Red Arrows. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge also paid tribute to the men and women who served their country. The couple released 5 new images of Kate visiting the Army's Purbright Training Academy in Surrey. And earlier, HMS Prince of Wales returned to Portsmouth Naval Base after completing NATO exercises off the coast of Spain. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Nana Akua is here in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he will keep fighting after the Lib Dems overturned a huge majority in Tiverton and Honiton, and Labour retook the seat of Wakefield in a double-dose by-election loss. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you blame then? There are 4 options. Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and journalist and broadcaster Matt Stadlen. Right, so what do you think then? So there's been a few things there's been the 4 options that we had on there was, of course, who do you blame? I'm going to start with you, Neil. Who do you blame? What do you think?
Well, the reality is that Boris is a broken brand. He was an asset to the Conservatives before the 2019 election. He won the election to the mayoralty of London twice, and London's not a Tory city. So he clearly has been a very successful campaigner. But the reality is now that after 3 years' experience of him as Prime Minister for a variety of reasons, I don't think that he personally can recover from the trashing that he's given himself. And as he's currently in Rwanda, I think he'd be better advised to stay out there as a poster boy for Priti Patel's policy and seek asylum himself. He's also very popular in Ukraine, so he could go there. But I don't think he's going to win any election in the United Kingdom. And it's partly because of Partygate, but I think more particularly it's because we don't really know what's the purpose of this Conservative government. Immigration immigration is totally out of control. 880,000 people last year acquired a right of settlement in the United Kingdom.
The purpose of this Conservative government is Boris Johnson.
Well, that's true, because I don't believe he has any political strategy at all. He's fundamentally an entertainer. Rather than a politician. Yeah.
But you could say that
but the joker's worn a bit thin, I'm afraid.
Well, Vladimir Zelensky was a comedian. He's not doing badly. Well, what do you think?
I think there are... You mentioned a lot of the possible reasons why people voted in the way that they did in Tiverton and also in Wakefield. Wakefield's an important seat because it's symbolic. It was part of the Red Wall in 2019 that turned partially blue. And then I think Tiverton, in a way, is almost more important because what it reminds us is that if there is a left-leaning, and the Lib Dems, you could say, are gently left-leaning, Starmer's no way near as far left-leaning as Corbyn, but if there is a left-leaning pact, and it can be an informal one, it doesn't have to involve the party leaderships, it can be amongst us, it can be amongst the voters, and people vote tactically, as they clearly did in Tiverton, then this Conservative government, never mind Boris Johnson, will be unseated at the next election. Only something like 3% of people voted Labour in Tiverton. Why?
Can I just say that the turnout was actually not.
It was
that
low.
large,
it wasn't.
And it is a wide consensus that a lot of Conservative voters actually stayed away.
So some of those Conservative voters may well be re-energised when it comes to the next election. But why essentially were those 2 seats lost? And let's not forget. Let me answer the question. What happened in Tiverton? It's the biggest upset in British political history in terms of a majority overturned. Why did it happen? We have We have low growth in this country. We have low wages. I passed a petrol pump.
But that could,
maybe just quickly answer the question.
Matt, that could all be because of the pandemic.
It could be.
And also a lot of
be.
things. But if you were to choose those...
Yes, so it's the state of the country, partly. I passed a petrol station where it's 1.93 now. It's going up almost daily. We know that. Well, yes, but that doesn't mean that's not why people are voting the way they are. We have low growth, low wages, high inflation, high taxes. I don't think the tax yield has... You said you're fiscally conservative, Leo. I don't think the tax yield has ever been higher, but it's hitting poorer people. Also, people don't like being taken for fools. And what Boris Johnson did by setting the rules and then breaking them himself egregiously, in my view, makes people think that's exactly what he's doing. He is taking us for fools.
So you think it's Boris Johnson is the main reason. What do you think, Leo?
Yeah, but I've got to agree with everybody. I mean, Boris Johnson has really got to carry the can on this. I mean, he's been the leader for 3 years. And when people vote Conservative, I mean, call me crazy, but I think people want a Conservative government. Right. They don't want this left-leaning, extremely socially liberal, high tax, high spend government. They want a classically Conservative government. So maybe if we get a classically Conservative leader who, puts all the buffoonery to one side. I mean, Boris was a great mayor because a mayor is essentially just there to open supermarkets and appear on TV. But, a prime minister has got actual responsibilities. Yeah. The one place I think Boris has stepped up to the plate and led the world is in his support for Ukraine, and he's galvanised support and led Europe in that. But it's interesting to see. I mean, I don't think Brexit is the huge issue that it used to be, and to see Anne Widdecombe saying, Boris should be making, the reversal of Brexit illegal. That's anti-democratic. What if people want Brexit to be?
Well, I've listened to that, but I actually think that I don't think we all agree. I don't agree with you. I actually think that the people who are the reason why this is happening are actually the disgraced MPs, and to me, it's their behaviour. Hang on, thank you. It's their behaviour. I
was only breathing.
And you look like you're about to go and flap your gums as well and say something, and I had to stop you before because you do go on a bit. No, but listen, to me, it's the disgraced MPs to begin with, because if had they not, I mean, the reasons why they don't hold their seat, one for watching porn, another one is a convicted, child abuser. I mean, really.
Yeah,
hang on, sorry, I'm not finished.
Really don't.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished, and I'm not comparing. I'm just saying that the reason why those seats have gone are firstly those people, but I think the other reason why this is. I wouldn't blame Boris for all of this. I think everyone seems to just want to blame Boris for absolutely everything. I think if you look at the infighting within the party itself, I'd be blaming the way the backbenchers are behaving. They're not even giving him a chance to get on with the job. I want to see them do the job. I want to see him do the job.
Yeah, but the reason why backbenchers are behaving as they are is because they think that they cannot win if Boris is their leader at the next election. Why can't they win? Because this Conservative government has not been pursuing a Conservative programme of policy. The highest tax burden since the Attlee government in the 1940s. At the moment, pursuing green policies that are completely crazy, putting up the bills of people who are at the lowest levels of income in the country. We're talking about petrol bills. Half the £1.90 you pay at the pump goes in tax, VAT and fuel duty.
That's policy, and they should be changing policy. I'd agree with that as well. I agree with that, but I don't think getting rid of Boris is the answer.
The reason why we've got this huge public sector deficit, fiscal deficit, is because they decided to close the country down for 2 years. Well, if you close the country down for a couple of years, then you're bound to have huge bills to pay for the indefinite future.
But lots of people did that. Lots of countries around the world closed down because people were scared.
Well, they were wrong too.
So, well, they might have. Yes, they were wrong. They were wrong. But even though they were wrong, that doesn't mean it's all Boris's fault. To me, it's their policies I'm not happy with. Yeah, I would say, first of all, it's the backbench MP. I mean, first of all, it's the behaviour of those disgraced MPs. Then I'd be talking about the policy. Then I'd be talking about the infighting. And only at the end would I come to Boris Johnson.
But, Nana, look at the way that Boris Johnson and his acolytes are trying to frame this. We had rail strikes. The right is saying that Labour are taking us back to the 1970s. How desperate is that when the government has been in power for 12 years? The front page of the Mail a few days ago was Labour isn't working. They are trying to trick us, take us for fools again, and into believing that this is Labour's fault. You said a moment ago...
But the Tory party don't run the RMT.
No, but they do run the country, Leo. And you said that Labour don't have any policies.
They don't.
No, let me give you a couple.
Well, go on.
So Rachel Reeves is the Shadow Chancellor, and she's already touted £175 billion of possible tax relief. So that's one. Let me finish. Another flagship policy, and by the way, Nana, I agree from all sorts of different areas.
Because they're very good at handing money out. That's the problem with them. They're very good at handing money out and saying what they're going to do.
Well, Boris Johnson's handed a lot of money out as well.
There was a pandemic. Where did Rachel say that she was going to get that money from?
We can look into the detail of that. I'm trying to give you... Just because I haven't got the detail here doesn't mean she hasn't said it. She's also, Nana, and this is important, give me a fair say, she's also said that she wants to equalise the tax burden on unearned and earned income. That would make us a fairer society. I'm a landlord, right?
What do you mean by that?
I'm a landlord, right? So I'm lucky enough to have 2 properties, and I rent one of them out, and I make some money from it. When a hike in national insurance happened a few months ago, as a landlord, I didn't suffer at all, whereas people who are earning not substantial amounts of money up and down the country had their national insurance hiked. Why should people who are comfortable off enough, lucky enough to earn a second property and make money out of it, why should we not be taxed higher? And people who are earning 30, 40, 50,000 pounds a year are taxed higher. This government is making the wrong choices time and time again.
You're slightly wrong with that. You're slightly wrong with that.
Yes, but you don't have to tax employment, Neil.
Excuse me, you're slightly wrong with that, actually, with regard to landlord, because so am I. And the bottom line is, all your income, as a landlord, you used to be able to take off the value, the amount of money from your the mortgage that you're paying out, off the interest of the mortgage, off the income that you're earning. You can't do that now. It all adds to your final income.
When was that brought in, Nana?
About 2 years ago.
Yes, so I'm talking about the recent budget.
Let me finish. So it all adds up to your entire income. So whatever you're taxed at, so if you're a 40% tax payer, you'll pay 40% tax.
I'm talking about the choices, with respect, I'm talking about the choices the government is making now. That's what we're debating. And in the spring budget, the spring statement, you and I were not punished. People who are earning 30, 40,000 pounds, you might be in that part of your life, but as a landlord, as a landlady, you're not. The government keeps siding with the wrong people.
I think you're wrong.
He's right about that. National insurance.
But he said I wasn't hit by it. I was.
That was another Tory broken promise.
But your landlord, the money you make from being a landlord or landlady, if you want to be
self-identified.
Oh, crikey. Let's go to our Great British Voice. Sorry, we've got. The show's nothing without you, Crumbs. Let's go. Let's find out where our Great British Voice is. It's your opportunity to tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we head off to? Let's see. Let's go to Cumbria. Let's have a chat with Ollie Hodgson. Oliver Hodgson, well, it's very heated here. What do you think? What's the reason why these people didn't do well in these by-elections? What's your view?
Very heated indeed, Anna, and I love that about GB News. But I think it's a mixture of infighting and the disgraced MPs. I think we haven't talked enough about how nowadays a lot of the backbench MPs and the ministers are not talking to one another. There's no nuances anymore. I think we can't be surprised about Thursday's results. It's very similar to the local elections recently held in May. I mean, obviously, as you said, I'm up here in Cumbria, and it was an absolute embarrassment for the Conservative Party. We've got 2 new unitary authorities. One is now being governed by Labour and the other by the Lib Dems. And, the last general election, the Tories absolutely took over the seats in 2019. I think, we often look too deep into this. And I think the last 2 years, people have got really fed up of the pandemonium and the pantomime that is Parliament. My grandfather, who is in his late 70s, has been a diehard Tory for all of his life, and he didn't actually turn up to the local elections in May. And I think you probably saw that on Thursday. People are really fed up. They've almost lost connection with Parliament at the moment. And I think, as with Oliver Dowden's resignation, he's clearly seen sense. But I think people really now need to let the government try and crack on and reconvene in a couple of months, because the more we bang on about everything that's going on, it's kind of sidelining the crises that are happening at the minute, your cost of living in your Russia-Ukraine.
I totally agree with you, Oliver, and I'm glad you agree with me. That's Oliver Hodgson, a very sensible Great British Voice. He's there in Cumbria. Thank you so much. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. I've been asking, who do you blame for the by-election losses? Lots of you have been giving your views. Tom says Tory policies, which aren't Tory, is as simple as that.
Quite right.
Ewan says, not unusual for a government to lose by-elections mid-term, especially if they have a comfortable majority. Voters use this to give the government a warning shot. In this case, about Brexit, the Northern Ireland Protocol, Great British immigration and sleaze. Right, well, that's interesting. You should say that. See, nobody's really blaming Boris Johnson apart from these three. Right, well, and be quiet, be quiet. And there's a poll up right now on Twitter today throughout the show asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? And currently, Tory policies is winning with 33%, which is what I thought. Boris is second at 31%, Tory infighting third at 18%. And finally, the people who caused this whole shevangle in the first place, disgraced MPs with 17%. Well, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Still to come, we're talking about drowning in difficult conversations at 5. And this week, Drowning Prevention Week, Scotland has the highest rate of accidental drowning of all the UK nations, despite strategy to cut water deaths in half. They had 10 people drown for every million last year. That's more than 3 times the rate in England. So we'll be talking about that just after 5. Up next, Prince Charles told the Commonwealth nations that decisions about whether they keep the Queen as head of state or become a republic matters for them to decide. That's the Royal Roundup. It's after the break.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. It's just gone 54 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, there is always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different because each Saturday I like to give you a rundown, and it has been a very busy week, actually, for Prince Charles in particular. His so-called comments and Rwanda may come to bite him back. So how has his Rwanda trip gone? I'm joined now by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, I sounded like you when I did that, actually, Richard. Now, he's gone to Rwanda, Prince Charles, he's there.
He's gone to Rwanda to deputise for the Queen for opening the Commonwealth Conference, Chugum, the heads of government, was postponed twice, and the itinerary was, they paid homage to some of those who survived the terrifying genocide there. There were attempts to the issue of sustainability, of abuse of women and so forth. I thought that the royals, when they were there, handled it very well, but there was an enormous amount of publicity just before the conference when the issue, the policy never took off and still hasn't, but the issue of Prince Charles saying privately on several occasions, so it has been alleged, that the government's policy of sending illegal migrants to Rwanda was appalling. Now, this, if true, and again, Bernard Bogdan, our top constitutional expert, says that the fault was the person who leaked it. Now, to what extent he said it or whatever, I can't say. But what I can say is that it doesn't seem to have perturbed him that it got leaked. It is, however, somewhat controversial because you've got an issue where the Labour Party are opposed to it, and in that sense, this is an older Prince Charles, so to speak, coming back, a Prince Charles who gives views, strong views, not just on architecture, homeopathy, reading, English,
everything,
literature, and
climate
so on.
change.
But climate change isn't a party political issue.
Well, it
on
is
the China, well, on the issue, for example, of China, when he boycotted 2 banquets, so it was alleged because of his disapproval of the Chinese regime. This sort of thing, I thought he had, so to speak, outgrown it in a sense.
Yes.
At the age of 60, though, it was indicated that he would be, when king, someone who was somewhat of an activist. That is not the job. At the age of 70, he rubbished the thought. Listeners, viewers must make up their minds what precisely they think that comment was meant, were it meant for public dissemination. But there's no doubt it has caused something of a political storm. We'll wait and see what comes next.
Because I'm wondering whether they gave him a bit of a frosty reception or whether he was received quite honourably and nicely.
Yes, well, that's the interesting thing, you're right, because, of course, Rwanda was hosting the conference. It was in Kigali. But interesting, Britain was trying to replace Baroness Scotland, the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, with the Foreign Minister of Jamaica. Now, that failed, so it's been a catastrophic week for Boris Johnson in every respect.
Now, how's it gone down as well? Because part of one of Prince Charles's comments was that if people want to become a republic instead of have the Queen as head of state or him instead of head of state, that he would support all the ideas that people want to do that. Has that gone down well?
Well, he was simply stating what always has been Buckingham Palace's attitude. It's always been up to individual countries. 14 still keep the Queen. It is thought that Jamaica, possibly Australia, may very well become republics. We simply don't know. And in that case, they'll have to have a referendum, which Barbados, which is the last one to replace the Queen, didn't dare have.
No, they wouldn't. Is there any other juicy gossip or anything else?
Oh, well, yes, but William, turning 40 and... on the issue of homelessness, this is his new campaigning. He's always been very sensitive to the issue. Diana introduced him to it. And, of course, on his interview, The Big Issue, and actually selling The Big Issue. And also, I have to say, for someone who's as dynamic as he is, and I think he and Catherine are the world's most glamorous royal couple, I don't think that the new portrait by Jamie Corrith, which you'll have seen in some of the papers, did them justice. It was too inanimate.
Yeah, they're lovely. I think they're great. They're going to make such great monarchs, aren't they?
I think
really
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to them taking over. Charles, not so much. Not so much. Richard Fitzwilliams, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me here on GB News. That was Richard Fitzwilliams. He's a royal commentator. Right, well, stay with us because at 5 we'll be talking about drowning because it's Drowning Prevention Week this week. There is actually a new campaign designed to raise awareness of water safety ahead of the summer outdoors. But it's not just children who need to be aware of the dangers of the water. We'll be looking at how adults can also keep safe there. If you just join me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. Good afternoon. So, where have you been? GB News. We've got loads still to come in the next hour. For the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. As ever, the show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one ever gets cancelled. So make sure you join me. Keep all your thoughts coming. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock and here are the latest news headlines. Boris Johnson has been defending his leadership by claiming voters want to hear more about real issues that affect them and much less about mistakes he may have made. The Prime Minister was responding to recent criticisms, including the resignation of the Tory party chairman after a double by-election defeat, COVID lockdown parties and soaring inflation.
Things are tough. Of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think, to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
Well, Labour's Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey told GB News the public does want Mr Johnson to go.
I'd spent a lot of time campaigning in Wakefield, very struck by the level of disgust and discontent as people, I think, have seen through Boris Johnson and have lost confidence in the Conservatives doing the basic job of government now. And so it's our job in opposition until the next election to try and hold them to account and offer some of the plans that would make a difference, including on the cost of living, that we're just not seeing from the government itself.
Well, in other news today, the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the railway industry needs to move with the times as a third day of walkouts disrupts transport systems across the country. A fifth of train services are still running today as thousands of rail workers protest over jobs, pay and conditions. The RMT boss, Mick Lynch, says there could be further strikes this summer if an agreement isn't reached.
We're not going to name dates immediately. And we're going to continue working constructively with the companies to try and get a deal. But that is a really steep challenge at the moment. And it hurts our people because they've lost their wages. We don't want that to happen. So if Grant Shapps wants to be constructive, that's what he can do. It's up to him what his disposition is. I'll work with Grant Shapps or anyone else that's got something constructive to say in this dispute.
In the United States, President Joe Biden has signed in historic new gun safety legislation. Republicans and Democrats agreed a deal following the Texas school massacre and a string of other mass shootings in America. The new measures strengthen background checks for the youngest buyers of weapons and increases funds for mental health and school safety programs. President Biden says he's praised the bill, even though he says it doesn't go far enough.
For the shootings that happen every day in the streets that are mass shootings we don't even hear about, the number of people killed every day in the streets. Their message to us was do something. How many times have we heard that? Just do something. For God's sake, just do something. Well, today we did. While this bill doesn't do everything I want, it does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives.
Well, Norway has raised its terror threat level after the deadly shooting overnight at a gay nightclub in Oslo. 2 people died and 21 others were hurt. Officers say a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin is now in custody. The shooting happened just hours before the city's annual Pride Parade, which has been cancelled. Ukrainian forces defending Severodonetsk in the east of the country have been ordered to withdraw. The retreat would leave most of Luhansk under Russian control. Earlier today, the UK Ministry of Defence said Russian armoured units continue to make creeping gains in the region. Intelligence chiefs suggest President Putin has replaced several generals since the start of the war, including the commander of airborne forces. And here, Armed Forces Day has been marked up and down the country, including a display from the RAF's Red Arrows team. And earlier on, the HMS Prince of Wales ship returned to Portsmouth Naval Base after completing NATO exercises off the Spanish coast. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have also marked the day, paying tribute to men and women who've served their country, both in the UK and around the world. Lastly, Sir Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury Festival's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. His set is expected to attract an especially large crowd with hits from throughout his career. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens now. Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. Still to come in just a few moments. It's time for my difficult conversation, and today we'll be talking about drowning, because it's Drowning Prevention Week. Now, the campaign is designed to raise awareness of safety in the water ahead of the summer outdoors. Now, it's the idea that the Royal Life Saving Society put together, and they visit schools to teach children about how they can stay safe. But it's not just all about children, it's also adults as well, because water can be very dangerous. We're looking at what adults can do, and I only learned to swim just a few years ago, I know. So for those of you joining me on radio, we're just about to show a video of me majestically diving into the pool for the first time. I know, it's quite sad, really. I mean, you think it's good, but look. That's it. It didn't do very well. I mean, it was just a little dive. But that was, if you can watch that back if you like, it's not that impressive. And then coming up, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Now, protests have taken place in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. But what do you think? Glastonbury's singer Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women during her headline set. So for our debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Get your thoughts in now. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not tweet me at gbnews. So it's time for our difficult conversation, and today I want to talk to you about something that can potentially be avoided. This week is Drowning Prevention Week, and the idea of it is to help people keep safe throughout the summer. A lot of people tempted to jump into the water because it looks like it's worth a punt, but a lot of people finding themselves in difficulty. You might even be a good swimmer, and in a pool you'll be fine, but if you go open water swimming, that could be a whole different kettle of fish, and you could find yourself in quite a bit of trouble. Personally, as I said, only a few years ago I learned to swim. So to discuss all of that and to joining me now is my swim coach Harley Hicks and Devonnier Hackney. Now, Harley, first of all, talk to me about swimming, because you are drowning. First of all, it's one of those things that people think that, oh, if you're a good swimmer, you're unlikely to drown. Is that a reality?
Well, I mean, if you look at the World Champs recently, a couple of days ago actually, there was a Team USA artistic swimmer who drowned during her performance, and her coach had to actually dive in and save her. So this is, Olympic level.
She didn't die, did she?
No. She didn't die, but she was unconscious at the bottom of the pool. So obviously something's happened, and I'm sure there'll be, an inquest into kind of like exactly what happened. But for some reason, she's stopped breathing. She's gone to the bottom of the pool, and artistic swimmers are known for being able to hold their breath for very long amounts of time underneath the water. But she obviously wasn't breathing. Her coach had to get in and save her. So if somebody at an Olympic level can drown, that means anybody can drown. So you have to be really careful in and around the water.
Now, Devonnier, you have come. Is Devonnier like somebody who you taught to swim?
Yeah. So I mean, he'll be able to introduce himself properly in a second. But I taught him to swim a few years ago, and he's had an amazing journey of now becoming a swimming teacher himself. And he was actually coaching this morning, wasn't you?
Yes, so currently I was teaching swimming lessons. I had the little ones this morning.
Yeah, he's been coaching for the last few years himself, teaching little kids how to swim. Not only that, managed to get a place in Camp America as a swimming teacher as well. All from learning as an adult. So I think he'll be able to tell you a bit more about it in a second, but it's never too late to learn to swim.
No, you see, because I learned to swim like a couple of years ago. Like I said, it wasn't that I couldn't swim, it's just that I didn't realise what the technique was, because I could do 4 really good strokes. Then I put my head under the water and I couldn't understand why I couldn't do any more. And then Harley told me that you need to breathe out when you're under the water. I'd been holding my breath. I
remember.
Underwater, you're supposed to breathe out, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when you come up, you're like... and then you can't do anything else. And that was me. I didn't understand. But when I went to your thing, there were people who were literally clinging to the side of a pool that they could actually put their feet on the bottom. They weren't, because they were scared that they would drown. But
you'll be surprised at how many people, small little things like that, like being able to breathe out into the water or understanding that you need to do that. So many people don't realise that. And it's sometimes small little things that stop people from being able to swim comfortably and feel confident in the water. But then you're right, there's the other extreme cases where people are really, really scared of water for whatever reasons. And on the projects that we've run in the past and the project that you was on as well, there were so many people that shared their stories as adults as to why they can't swim and won't swim and refused to have lessons for multiple different reasons. It could be having bad experiences as a kid or how they was taught as a kid, the old school methods of just kick someone into the water and then they learn for themselves. But I think you'll be surprised that how many people have those kind of stories behind them around learning to swim.
Well, as I got older, it's because I didn't want to take my wig off. That was all that other mind.
That's another one as well.
Exactly. I didn't get my hair wet. I couldn't be bothered. But Devonia, so what's your story then?
So I think I used to swim as a child, but I'd never say I was a great swimmer. I was good enough to make it seem like I could swim. So I think going into learning to swim with Harley, I realised that, okay, actually, I'm not as strong as I thought. I ended up gaining a love for swimming through it. And then after I've done the course, I wanted to pursue it further. So with the help of Harley, I ended up getting all my qualifications. So I'm a swimming teacher, I'm a lifeguard, I do a bit of coaching. So and it's even giving me the chance to go to America and go out there and do lifeguarding. I think even doing this, realising that other people share my possibilities, my fears, it's made me want to pursue doing this, making a project for myself to try and help people who have that fear to get over it. 'Cause I think a lot of it's just being comfortable. And as you get older, I think you're just like, okay, I've passed the point, there's no point learning to swim. But it's never too late to learn.
Because older people, because a lot of time people who, as you get older, you think, oh, I'm not going to swim because it's too embarrassing, or there could be all sorts of different reasons why people don't want to swim. But do you have any tips for people? So if you find yourself in things like cold water, because obviously, there are things about, a lot of people drown in things like cold water because they're not ready for the water. What are the tips that people should need to be wary of, and how can they help themselves?
Well, I think education is a big part of this, and over 400 people every year drown in the UK. And that can be for lots of different reasons. The main reason is they don't know how to swim. So people get themselves into situations where they are, out of the depth in the water, or cold water shock, or whatever it may be. But I think the key thing is making sure people understand the risks of all different types of water environments, whether it's a swimming pool, cold water. Sea, ocean, the currents.
What is cold water shock, though? What is that?
If you're not used to swimming in cold water, a lot of people. You've done a bit of open water yourself. I've swum open water quite a bit. One of the most important things you need to do is acclimatise to the surroundings. So not getting in straight away and going for it. If you've got your wetsuit on, getting some water underneath your wetsuit and slowly acclimatising to the temperature of the water that you're in, rather than just jumping in and swimming and without any sort of thought behind it. But yeah, I think regardless of whether it's cold water, pools, You know, people need to be really careful around making sure that they are safe in the water. And I think the first barrier to that is learning to swim and just making sure that you're comfortable in water itself.
What would you say is the biggest discipline in swimming that you should learn? I know what you're going to say.
In terms of...
Well, if you're on deep water, what's the one thing everyone should be able to do?
Well, I mean, treading water has got to be one of the key things, because if you ever have an accident or, you know, over a boat or slip into the Thames or whatever it is, if you can keep your head above the water for a period of time, then that's going to give you an extra chance. You know, if you're not a swimmer, that's going to give you an extra chance to call for help, and hopefully then people can come and whether it's a lifeguard, you know, whoever, to come and get you out of that situation.
What if you're in a strong current, say, like someone like the River Thames that has some sweeping undercurrents and things like that? What can you do there? Because even the strong swimmers get stuck in that.
Listen, even the strongest swimmers will get stuck in that. And
what can you do, though, if you're in that situation?
What I would say is, with regards to things like the Thames, and we've seen incidents in the last couple of years where people have been, you know, it's been highlighted in the news, and people have ended up drowning in the Thames, is to really, you know, avoid those types of water, you know, at all costs. Do not play with the water. Do not mess around near those water edges. You know, any water with strong currents, stay well away would be my advice.
Because I went to Bermuda one time with this really rich guy. He took me, I didn't have to pay for anything, it was great. But I went to Bermuda and we were just by the edge, you know, so we weren't actually that much in the water. And he was just holding my hand and I was going, yeah, and doing my little nicey look and everything. And literally, this thing, it was as though somebody had put a lasso on my foot, on both our feet, and just gone, and just whipped us into the water. It was like there was a string that come from under the water to pull us back, and we both went, down, straight in. And this water couldn't have been, it was no higher than my knees.
Yeah, and in situations like that, the key thing I would say is, hopefully no one finds themselves in a situation where they're in really strong currents, but try not to fight the water. You know, the water will always win if you try to fight it. If you, in any type of water, you know, if you relax, try to make yourself big, and then again, you know, if you know things like treading water and you can keep yourself up enough to call for help, that's really, you know, the best that an average person can do in those sort of situations.
Well, listen, what are you up to now then, if people want to find out more about the things you're doing?
So yeah, I'm on Instagram, Swim with Harley. You can, I regularly update kind of like what I'm doing at the moment. At the moment, I'm head coaching a swimming club in East London, in Walthamstow. We've got some fantastic swimmers there, all ages, and yeah, soon we'll be running more projects around open water and adult learn to swim as well. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then yes, Swim with Harley on Instagram is probably the best place where you'll see those updates.
And are they rolling these things out all across the country as well? Because other places hopefully doing that as well, offering adults opportunities to learn to swim as well.
Well, this is one of the things, is that like the kind of projects that you guys went on a few years ago, they've been replicated a little bit across the country, but I wouldn't say they've been replicated enough. And we're still in a situation where you've got, you know, 1 in 5 adults still can't swim in this country. You've got a situation where 1 in 4 kids leave primary school not being able to swim 25 metres. And you've got a situation where there's still no ring-fence money in the curriculum to support swimming, although swimming is in the curriculum. So I don't think there's enough of these things happening, whether it's adult learn to swim projects, whether it's, you know, children learning to swim at school. I think more needs to be done by the government, by everybody. But, you know, hopefully, you know, we can highlight it, and weeks like this help to highlight it, and then we can make more things like that happen in the future.
Well, listen, never did I think that my dad's words, Nana, and they haunted me at that time, Nana. I've seen people being swept away from the tide with just a little bit of... He was right. He was right. Listen, Harley and Devonia, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
No problem at all.
Thank you so much. And listen, stay with me, because on the way, the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? The US Supreme Court has ended constitutional protections for abortion that have been in place for nearly 50 years by deciding to overturn the landmark Roe versus Wade ruling. Now, it led to protests outside the United States Embassy in London, with people holding signs saying, "Our bodies, our choice." So for our great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? And don't forget, tomorrow I'll be discussing the top stories with Andrew Pearce from the Daily Mail, and the columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Now, though, it's time to get an update with your weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be breezy and unsettled with showers for northern and western areas. Let's look at the details. Showers across southwest England will continue to move through quite quickly, so there will be some late sunny spells. However, it'll feel quite fresh with a strong southwesterly breeze. In southeast England, it'll be a dry evening with sunny spells coming and going, feeling relatively fresh here too with a strengthening breeze. In South Wales, heavy showers will push northeastwards throughout the evening, feeling quite cool exposed to the brisk westerly breeze and during any showers. In the Midlands, it will turn a little bit drier into this evening as showers move away to the north, so a mix of cloudy and clear spells and still the risk of the odd shower too. In northeast England, after a relatively dry day, cloud cover will increase for some with a risk of showers into the evening. Windy at the coast with gusts of 30 miles per hour. Southern Scotland will see sunshine and showers this evening as well, feeling cool whilst raining, but it will dry up quickly once they clear and the sun comes out once again. It'll be a very windy evening for the time of year in Northern Ireland. More persistent rain will continue in the west, whilst the east will see some sunny spells. Overnight it will remain clear in the east, but further west it'll turn much wetter again and the winds will pick up too. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. So it's 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua and it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Now, protests have taken place in the UK after the decision to scrap the constitutional right of abortion in the United States. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, I think it's a big step backwards. I've always believed in women's rights to choose, and I stick to that view, and that's why the UK has the laws that it does. So what do you think then? Our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Let's cross live to LA now to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge, and find out what's been going on. What is the general vibe there after this decision?
Oh, well, the vibe is hostile, to say the least. This is not my studio. I'm hiding from my wife in this bunker at the moment. So if that's any indication. Yeah, we've had riots. We've had tear gas crowds in Arizona last night. Well, Arizona, New York, Los Angeles, Iowa. Riots all across the country. It is... Again, we're just sort of... It's Glastonbury and riot season, basically. We are exploding over here.
And I get the gist then is that basically the states are now down to decide whether or not abortion can happen in that place. And I understand that half of the states are likely to take up that opportunity and ban the right of abortion for women. Is that right?
Exactly. Look, I'm glad you framed it that way, because the way this is being reported, even across the United States, is that abortion is now banned. Abortion isn't banned at all. I mean, I'm in California. It's exactly the same law today as it was yesterday. The Supreme Court has decided that it should be for the state to decide what their policy is. And again, I'd say to all the rioters, we have midterm elections coming. I was alluding to this last week. I got a lot of stick for saying Trump wouldn't win against Hillary. These are the kind of reasons why. The Democrats are very, very happy privately about this decision, because this gives them something to fight for in the midterm elections coming up in November. If people don't like this decision, they can elect 34 senators in November to actually change this. They can change Congress this November if they choose to.
Well, listen, Paul, thank you for that. I will get a full update with you tomorrow in Worldview. Thank you so much, Paul. Will be joining us tomorrow at around about 10 to 5 o'clock. Right, I'm joined now by writer, author and blogger Jenny Holland. Jenny, first of all, what do you think then? Should women have access to abortion?
Well, I mean, to answer your original question, I think women have a human right to self-determination. And I think that includes unfettered access to abortion up until the end of the first trimester. Once that time passes, then the life of the growing baby within her has to be balanced out with hers, and that's there's processes in place to do that. And obviously, the original law, the original court case that brought about this Supreme Court ruling was taking issue with the fact that Mississippi banned abortions after 15 weeks. And so I think the original collapse really became when the pro-choice movement decided it was going to pick late-term abortion as the hill to die on, and that turned out to be a terrible error on their part.
Because currently, I think in the UK, it's up to 24 weeks, I think, and then after that, it's different. Then the fetus is now considered as a human being. Do you think that that's a reasonable time, or do you think it should be brought forward, as you mentioned, 16 weeks in?
I think it's far too late. I'm pro-choice. I have always been pro-choice. The one element where I've become slightly more conservative is that I believe that once the first trimester has passed, except for medical reasons, there are. I don't think abortion is right. Now, that is, I think, quite a common sense position, and I think most people would hold that position, except for these left-wing ideologues who I think are really out of touch with a lot of people's feelings on the matter.
So do you think abortion is actually a human right?
Again, I think I think self-determination is the question. Do women have the right to run their lives as they see fit? And they absolutely do. The problem is that abortion is essentially about two lives, not one life, because there is another life growing inside of the woman. So I think even in the sort of bad old days, there was an understanding that abortions or ending pregnancies at the beginning of pregnancies was not as grave a crime as doing it later on. The farther on you go, the more complex it becomes, and the more sort of morally bad it becomes. And I think that's just been a kind of a basic human understanding. Obviously, there's always been people who are categorically against abortion, no matter if it's a day-old pregnancy, immediately after conception, it doesn't matter. And those people have a right to that view. I don't agree with that. I don't know if I would go so far as to say abortion is a human right. No, I don't think I would say that.
Jenny Holland, thank you so much for your thoughts. She's a writer and author. Right, I'm also joined by Eden McCourt from Abortion Resistance, a non-profit organisation who want to end abortion. Right, so what's your view then? I'm saying, is it a human right in your view that you want to end it?
Thank you for having me on. I don't agree that abortion is a human right. The first and most fundamental of all rights is the right to life. If that right is not protected, then no other rights exist. And just to say a bit of extra stuff to what you were just speaking about with Jennifer there, in the UK, we can have abortion up to 24 weeks, but it's also up to birth in the case of a suspected fetal anomaly, which I think is absolutely barbaric.
But what if, if there's something wrong with the fetus, you think that the people shouldn't be allowed to abort it? What about if someone has been raped or there's incest or something that's awful has happened that this person has now ended up being pregnant? Is that still a terrible thing to do at that point?
I think abortion is always terrible in any circumstance. I think in the case of rape, people like to bring this argument up because it is very, very, very heart-wrenching. It's very emotional. And nobody wants to, to sound like they're discompassionate towards the woman who's experienced that traumatic thing. The way that I tend to see it and my group see it is that rape is a terrible act of violence committed on the body of an innocent human being. And abortion is also a terrible act of violence committed on the body of an innocent human being.
So if it was, say, let's just say for argument's sake, and it would be a terrible thing, but say it was you and it happened to you, you'd been raped and you ended up being pregnant, would you feel you should keep the baby? And you would keep the baby?
Absolutely, absolutely. Humans are humans from the moment of fertilization. We know that from science, from biology, and to discriminate against some human beings and deem them less worthy of life simply for who their fathers are or the way that they were conceived, or even if they have a disability, I think it's, it's an outdated and regressive mindset to have. Again, me saying that isn't kind of meaning to sound discompassionate towards women, because that is one of the most traumatic experiences a woman can go through. But we can't use a traumatic experience to justify ending an innocent human life.
What if so that happens, and then what if you haven't got the financial means or anything to support this child? Are you going to be there to help with the fallback for the person who has to look after the child and also the mental health of that person? What is there?
Absolutely.
Like that?
So there are lots of pro-life organisations in the UK who do provide support for women in crisis pregnancies and parents and families who are struggling financially, emotionally, all the different ways that they can. And I think there's a real lack of awareness of all the support that we do have to provide for women during pregnancy and also after when they have their babies. It's just a matter of getting that information out there, and hopefully anyone who's watching, get in touch with our page. We've got a lot going on. We're helping a lot of women at the moment as well. Another thing is, oh, yeah.
Eden, because we're running out of time. Eden, do you have any children?
I'm currently pregnant, 7 weeks pregnant. So on live television, that's great. Everyone knows.
So it's good that you're pregnant, but you don't actually have any idea what it's like to really look after your own child yet, but you will have that child soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting that you should be giving that sort of advice. Eden, thank you very much for joining us. Eden McCourt, she's the Director of Public Relations and Media for Abortion Resistance. Let's take a quick look at what you've already been saying about this. Tom says, why are the Brits so obsessed with what happens in America? Well, not really obsessed, just asking your thoughts on whether you think it's a good or bad thing, because you never know what starts out there ends up here. Marie says, no, killing your own offspring is not a human right. Fee says, what a woman decides to do with her own body is no one's business except her own. Nick says the person carrying the unborn child has the right to choose with the counselling and support, not the government, nor protesters with banners who will not offer any support, nor a neighbour, nor a stranger, nor religion, nor culture, nor me. I love it. Right. It's 33 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, we'll continue with our great British debate. I'm asking, is abortion a human right? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and also journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Prime Minister has hailed what he's calling an inspiring and uplifting few days in Rwanda as the UK announces plans to support marginalised groups abroad and help tackle global challenges. During the trip, Boris Johnson continued to defend his leadership, facing questions following a double by-election defeat. He says voters want to hear more about the issues that affect them and less about any mistakes he may have made.
I have to, listen to all sorts of criticism. That's part of my job as leader. When things are tough, of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the railway industry needs to move with the times as a third day of walkouts disrupts transport across the country. 20% of train services are still running today as thousands of RMT union members protest over jobs, pay and conditions. The union's refusing to rule out further action. In international news, Ukrainian authorities say Russian forces have taken full control of the eastern city of Severodonetsk. It's Ukraine's biggest defeat in the war after the city suffered weeks of bombardment. Most of the Luhansk region in the east is now under Russian control. UK intelligence chiefs believe President Putin has replaced several of his generals since the start of the war, including the commander of airborne forces. And here, Armed Forces Day has been marked up and down the country, including with a dramatic display from the RAF's Red Arrows and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge also paying tribute to the men and women who've served their country. The couple released new images of Kate visiting Pirbright's Army Training Centre in Surrey. And earlier, HMS Prince of Wales returned to Portsmouth Naval Base after completing NATO exercises off the coast of Spain. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. And it's back to Nana Akua after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. If you've just joined us, where on earth have you been? It is actually time for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Now, the US Supreme Court on Friday abolished the constitutional right to abortion. That's more than 50 years after it was established, and it's ultimately expected to lead to abortion bans in about half of the states. Protests have taken place in the UK after the decision to scrap the constitutional right to abortion in the US. So for our debate this hour, I'm asking, is abortion a human right? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, comedian Leo Kearse, and journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. I'm going to start with you, Leo, seeing as your wife is pregnant. She's about to have a baby.
Yeah.
soon. That lady was pregnant, the one who was telling us all that we should all keep our babies. She was pregnant and hasn't actually got any kids.
Yeah, we'll see if she's still protective in a couple of years' time.
Exactly. So what do you think then?
Well, I mean, having children does, or the process of pregnancy does make you think about this, because I used to not realise that in the States, I think abortion was legal up until under Roe v. Wade was legal up until 24 weeks, and at 24 weeks, I mean, it's not just it's not a fetus, it's not a collection of cells. Man, that thing's vaping, that thing's got its own like TikTok account. That's a real little person in there. So, and I think the law that they were supporting, they tried to overturn a ban on abortions after 15 weeks in Mississippi. So the Supreme Court upheld that ban, and 15 weeks sounds about right. So I believe that women should have access to abortion, but not when it's walking around vaping and stuff. It's ridiculous. And also in a lot of states, the abortion ban won't be supported by public opinion because of this weird electoral quirk, which means that the only threat to a Republican in a lot of states is another Republican. So you've got to be the most Republican person.
Matt, what do you think?
I don't necessarily think it's a human right. So I think there is a legitimate clash of rights, particularly as the pregnancy develops. Personally, and I'm just a man, but personally, I would hate to be involved in a process with a woman where there was an abortion. Of course, it would be entirely up to her within the legal limits, but that's not a choice that I would want to make with my partner, because my partner now is also pregnant and we're having a baby in September, and I feel very much like Leo. When you see the scans and you see a fully formed little baby, I mean, there's nothing more exciting in life. I don't think it can be a human right because there's a sliding scale, isn't there? I'd say there are very few people in this country who would support abortion beyond 24 weeks.
Yeah, OK, but let's
beyond 30 weeks.
Let's stick with the premise that it is in this country, which is 24 weeks.
I can understand why women are so outraged by this, and I do believe in the woman's right to choose. Where you draw that line, I think, is the really difficult question.
Neil?
Well, I'm the odd man out here because I'm the only one with a partner who's not pregnant. She's in hospital, but not for that reason. So I feel rather diffident, of course, as an elderly male, in opining on this subject. But I think that the term human rights is a bit of a nonsense, really, because we're just talking about a hierarchy of rights rather than something which is a right in all circumstances. We talk about the right to life, but there are circumstances in which the state takes life, whether it's for murder or for in times of war or whatever. So very few rights can be said to be absolute. But I think Jenny was really talking sense when she was on earlier on, that once a child in utero is viable, then clearly terminating that life is akin to murder, and that, I think, would be quite unconscionable. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what's happened in the United States Supreme Court, because this is really more about states' rights and the nature of the Constitution, going back to the Founding Fathers 250 years ago, rather than the substantive issue of abortion itself. And it'll be decided state by state on a democratic basis, and personally I see nothing wrong with that. Some states, like California, which is 25, 30 million people, are certainly not going to change the law on abortion.
But Neil, you can see why so many women in America feel so upset about this and so challenged, because it becomes a political lottery, state by state. If you happen to live in a state where the majority think that abortion should be banned, then that state has control over your body right from the word go.
Although you can drive to another state because they are connected. But
and nobody's forced $20 on a bus trip.
But the thing, but seriously, in terms of abortion, I mean, I myself personally, I've had 2 abortions. I'll be honest, I'll tell you that. But that was when I was very young at university, because I knew there was no way I could look after a child. It wasn't going to happen. And the second time was when I was with somebody who I knew there was no way he would look after a child. So I knew I'd be all on my own. So, and I'm glad I was able to make that choice. If somebody said to me, oh, I'm going to have to drive across this and do that, or we're going to decide whether you're allowed to do that or not, I think that would be a problem. And all that I suspect will happen in the case of the United States, this will push the sort of backstreet abortions up. It will push things
underground.
It's not going to change the numbers of people who have the abortion, but it will change the way that's done. And we're fortunate in this country that we actually have a system, a healthcare system, that you can actually get that done for free. But there's also abortion pills as well and things like that.
And also, I mean, looking at all the protests, you know, there's all these blue-haired liberal freakazoids, you know, screaming that they want abortions. Surely, if you're a Conservative, you don't want more of those people. No. This is a chance for them to wipe themselves out.
No. But yeah, I can remember actually at one of these abortion clinics, they actually had the fetus. And actually, the last child I had at 46, I wasn't even sure whether I was going to have that one. But I did have that one in the end. I'm very, very glad I did. And the reason I did have that child was because I already had one child already, and in my head, I would never have another abortion. But I did go through the process of almost doing that again.
I think it's also important to make clear that you can't, as a woman, and not that anyone would want to do that, rock up at an abortion clinic and say, I want to have an abortion, it's my right. The health of the mother has to be taken into account. One of the aspects of that health, of course, is mental health, and that can be quite loosely interpreted, so that up to a certain stage of pregnancy, if you do want to have an abortion, you almost inevitably will. But it's not quite as simple legally to say you just turn up to a clinic and say, I'll have an abortion. Of course you can.
Well, let's see what our Great British Voice is thinking, because this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome on our Great British Voice. Let's find out. Where should we go? Let's head towards Watford. Yeah! Let's go and have a chat with David Balm. David, welcome to the programme. Do you think abortion should be a human right?
Hello, Nana. I think in this case, until the fetus is fully formed and has a functioning heart and brain, it is the mother's right to decide, especially if the fetus is deformed. But I find it fascinating, this debate is started in America, where it's legally allowed to carry guns, kill anybody. They won't stop guns, but they want to stop abortions. And it's just doing a barbaric way of running things in the 21st century. They want to go back to the 1960s, by the looks of it, in some states, where you have backstreet abortions. It's wrong. I don't think it's side for a woman.
It's interesting you say that. Thank you very much for that. That's David Balm. He makes a good point, because in this very same week, didn't they just relax the laws on handguns so you can carry guns around?
And Joe Biden, as we saw in the news headlines earlier, is trying to turn the tide back a little, but he's rather impotent as a president, as all presidents have. Obama tried as well, but I think you're absolutely right. In the same week where it becomes easier to kill people in America with guns, they're clamping down on abortion. It says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, it's actually a demonstration of the failure of policing to protect people. People feel that the only way they can protect themselves is to be armed like the criminals. So this is a much more complex issue, perhaps.
The danger for the Supreme Court is they're going against public opinion on abortion and on gun control. So they're delegitimising themselves. And long term, this could present serious obstacles to the Supreme Court continuing in its current state.
This is what happens when judges make laws rather than elected politicians.
Yep, it's the politicisation of the judiciary.
Right, well, that's what we think. What do you think? Well, in other news, the Metropolitan Police have referred another 8 cases of strip searches of children for independent investigation. Now, there was an outrage over the case of Child Q. That was the one where a 15-year-old black girl was strip searched at school whilst she was actually menstruating, which are just terrible what they did there, with an appropriate adult being present. Now, the police apologised, and a local council report said that the child treatment was in part the result of discrimination. The Met announced on Friday that it had referred a string of cases to the police watchdog. So let's see what my panel make of that. Now, I'm joined, of course, by Leo Kearse, Neil Hamilton, and also Matthew Stradlin. What do you think of this? I mean, this is horrendous, this story here. There were the strip-searching teenagers and young children between the ages of, I think, is 11 to 14 to 17 or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking that, children this young are being strip searched. But, I mean, the idea to strip search them hasn't come from nothing. People aren't doing it for fun. We've got to look at what's wrong in society. What are, these children carrying weapons habitually? Children this age? What's wrong in society that the schools and authorities have been forced into the position of having to strip search children?
But the way they're doing it as well is not. The way they did this one, in particular in the case of Child Q, was really not right. I mean, there should have been a
What are you going to do?
Parent.
Turn them upside down and shake them?
her parent should have been there, and there was no parent there. It was just that's not how it should be done. What do you think, Neil?
Well, this is just another of the almost infinite number of failures of common sense in policing in this country. And the police are a really dysfunctional organisation now. We see this in so many ways at so many different levels. The number of scandals which has engulfed the Metropolitan Police and police forces all over the country, most egregiously in things like Operation Midland and so on, really shows that the police are not fit for purpose anymore. And apart from driving around in rainbow squad cars, doing nothing, they should actually be doing something to protect the public.
Could I just say, I've been the victim of 2 burglaries which haven't been solved, but I think that's an unfair and quite dangerous thing to say, Neil. I was on stage last night at the Buckingham Literary Festival with a woman who's a crime writer, become a famous crime writer, Claire McIntosh, and she worked for 12 years for the police, and she became a commander, I think, very high up in the Thames Valley Police. And she said that we make heroes out of firefighters, quite rightly, but we don't pay enough respect to police officers who try so hard in the large majority to get things right, risking their lives and helping to keep us safe. It's funding that matters, and the Tories have been in power for 12 years. They need to put more money into policing.
Well, I'd agree with that. Right, now it's time for our quick-fire quiz. This is the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. So with me, I'm joined by UKIP leader Neil Hamilton. Neil, buzz your buzzer. Lovely. Comedian Leo Kearse, your buzzer, please. And journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. Right, here we go. Right, here's question 1. Please play along at home. If you need squatters removed from your building, who are you going to call? Is it A, the bailiffs? Is it B, the council? Or C, a SWAT team? A SWAT team. Leo?
Is it a SWAT team?
Is it a SWAT team?
I saw the picture come up.
Yes, it is a SWAT team. Well done, Leo. 1 point to you.
Thank you.
Yes, squatters were actually evicted from a central London mansion with the help of Special Force veterans who abseiled down the front of the building. It seems reminiscent of an action movie. And they were needed to help block the windows, order to stop the squatters from jumping out as the bailiffs stormed the property. So do you think this was a bit excessive? I'll start with you, Leo, seeing as you won that one.
I mean, considering it's a SWAT team, yeah, possibly slightly excessive. I evicted squatters from a central London property during lockdown when the government made it illegal to remove them. I should probably rephrase that so it doesn't sound like I'm breaking the law. I helped them leave.
Very nice, very nice. Right, we'll move on quickly for that squatter one. Right, question 2. Drivers in London could face penalties for veering into cycle lanes. But how much will that fine be? Closest answer wins. Leo?
£120.
Pressure buzzer, don't speak without... Neil?
£250.
Matt?
£200.
£200. Let's see who's correct. It's £160. Who's the winner?
I think it's equidistant between me and Matthew.
Were you 120, were you?
Yeah. 120, what you... Oh, dear. Well, yeah, somewhere. Well, listen, from Monday, Transport for London will have... So nobody gets a point. We'll have... Do we give them both one? Let's give them both a point. We'll have new powers. I hope somebody's adding up. To issue penalty charges to motorists who veer into cycle lanes in the capital. I mean, should this be rolled out across the country, Matt? Matt, what do you think? Do you think we should roll this out across the country?
No.
What do you think? Neil?
Should what be rolled out across the country?
Should the whole fining thing be rolled out across the country?
No, certainly not.
What do you think?
Yeah, we've got enough fines already.
Yeah,
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Right, question 3. After the Lib Dems confirmed their victory in the Tiverton and Honiton by-election, what did their leader, Sir Ed Davey, unveil in the town centre? Was it A, a big orange hammer?
Yeah.
Well, you can't buzz until I've answered. I'll let you off, because you're new. I didn't mention it. Was it B, a big red wall, or C, a big blue door? Leo?
Is it a big orange hammer?
Yes. You've got a big orange buzzer.
What did you think?
A big blue door.
A big blue door?
Oh, is it a big blue door?
What do you think it is, Neil?
I would have thought it's the orange hammer.
Right, let's see. It's a big blue door! You thought you knew.
Because they wanted to show Boris the door.
Oh, I see. Well, do you know why they did a blue door? Do you know why they did a blue door? It's because they don't know whether their logo is yellow or orange, so they couldn't work it out, Liberal Democrats.
I know, while we returned very briefly to politics, just 20 seconds, I made a mistake earlier, and as a journalist, I like to correct my mistakes. I said that the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is looking to make £175 billion of tax cuts, tax credit. Actually, what she's doing is looking at existing tax credits of £175 billion, and she wants to cut them, scrap them, if they don't serve the taxpayer or the economy.
OK, so no real position on that either.
Another
half.
We're almost wiser now.
Yeah, that wraps it up, doesn't it? That makes it clear. Right, well, the whole thing with the blue wall, well, they've smashed the blue wall. They've burst Boris's bubble, is what that was all about. And now they've shown Boris the door, is exactly what was said there. So that was a visual message to the PM. Funny or cringy? Funny or cringy?
Bit cringy.
Cringy.
I think it's so cringy it's quite cool.
No. One word answer. Question 4, true or false? A virtual world could replace your TV. True or false?
True.
True.
I'm going to have to go with Neil. You didn't buzz, but I'm going to let you go first. It's true. I'm being nice to Neil. I don't normally do that because he's new.
Because I'm so old.
Yeah, you're right, Neil. A point for Neil, please. Yeah, it is true. Mark Zuckerberg says that the metaverse could eventually do away with TVs. The billionaire meta boss said that he runs Facebook and Instagram. He manages that the future will be like that and carried out in virtual worlds. Would you think he's right, Matt?
Quite possibly. Not if it's a virtual Facebook. Can you imagine how annoying that would be, seeing everybody's lunch in 3D?
Oh, yeah, what do you think?
Well, I'll probably be in a virtual world myself by then.
Well, as long as he doesn't mind us paying for it with virtual money. Right, question 5, your final question. What unusual creature injured 40 Russian troops this week? Was it A, a tiger, B, a goat, or C, a ghost? Leo.
It was a goat.
It was a goat.
Set off a booby trap.
Yes, this is true. The answer is a goat. At least 50 Russian soldiers have been injured after Ukrainians, a goat set off a booby trap that they were laying at the hospital. The troops were setting up a tripwire when an escaped goat from a farm village triggered it. So does that serve them right?
Absolutely. It's poetic justice.
Yeah.
Some would say it's karma.
So the Ukrainians now using goats instead of tanks, are they? Because we're not sending them the weapons they need.
Oh, no, that's terrible, Neil. We need to send them some tanks and send them everything we can. Well, listen, on today's show, we've been asking, what do you blame for the by-election losses? And according to the poll, 33% of you say Tory policies. In a close second, Boris Johnson at 29%. Third is Tory infighting, and 19% of you said that. And finally, disgraced MPs at 17%. I've got to say thank you so much to my fabulous panel. UKIP leader, Neil Hamilton. Thank you very much, Neil. And also comedian Leo Kearse and journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlin. And a big thank you to you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as ever. Joining me tomorrow is Lizzie Cundy and also Andrew Pearce. I'll be back at 4. I'll see you then.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be breezy and unsettled with showers for northern and western areas. Let's look at the details. Showers across southwest England will continue to move through quite quickly, so there will be some late sunny spells. However, it'll feel quite fresh with a strong southwesterly breeze. In southeast England, it'll be a dry evening with sunny spells coming and going, feeling relatively fresh here too with a strengthening breeze. In South Wales, heavy showers will push northeastwards throughout the evening, feeling quite cool exposed to the brisk westerly breeze and during any showers. In the Midlands, it will turn a little bit drier into this evening as showers move away to the north, so a mix of cloudy and clear spells and still the risk of the odd shower too. In northeast England, after a relatively dry day, cloud cover will increase for some with a risk of showers into the evening. Windy at the coast with gusts of 30 miles per hour. Southern Scotland will see sunshine